Welcome into No Pun Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. You may notice I look like I am in a dilapidated room because there's a weird wire to the right side of me, or to your left because you're watching me on the screen. I am on remote location back home, so if my audio suffers, I completely apologize to everyone listening. But I could not skip this show. We are covering the New England Patriots, which, as if you've listened to the show, they are my team. We all know Josh's team is the Eagles, who we covered last week. And if you missed last week's show, check it out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. If you're listening on 97.3, check us out there as well. And if you're watching or listening to the recorded version, we record live normally Wednesday evenings, but today we have a very special guest joining us, which means we're doing a little earlier in the day on Wednesday. Josh, I'll let you take over from here to introduce our third co-host and our newest guest, who is first time on the show.
Thanks, Joe. And as you guys can see, we've got Ryan with us at the Fantasy 5. Ryan, always nice to have you on board with us.
Glad
and we've got one of your bosses, actually.
Yes. It's a running theme for the last couple of weeks.
Wouldn't go that far. Appreciate the invite, guys.
Big welcome to Dave, who runs fantasygo.com. You can find him at fantasygo NFL on Twitter. Dave, thanks for joining us, man. I know it's kind of early out there on the West Coast.
I know, 10 a.m. It's bright and early. Normally I'm drinking a beer while I'm doing a podcast, but it might have to be a coffee this time.
Oh, you kidding me? Bloody Marys, mimosas, perfect.
There you go.
I had a former coworker on a Thursday walk out of his office, grab 2 Miller Lights out of the beer fridge, and say it's one of those days, and walk back into his office. 2 o'clock on a Thursday.
5 o'clock somewhere. Like,
I mean, hey,
life mantra right there.
Well, 5 o'clock during these times is getting earlier and earlier.
Yeah.
Right?
So pretty soon it's going to creep into 11.
Dude, it's quarantine. There are no time constraints right now.
Well, hey, look, it's nighttime in Australia, right?
It is actually.
There you go.
It's like 2 a.m.
At 2 a.m. bar run on a Thursday would be Thursday morning in Australia. There you go. So
I've been living in San Diego for about 8 years, but when I first moved over here, I was trying to follow rugby and what have you, but I got sick of waking up at 3 a.m. to watch the game, so I gave that up pretty quickly. But,
so yeah. AFL or rugby?
I'm a rugby, so a lot of people think that everyone in Australia likes AFL, but no, it's very divided. The top half likes rugby, the bottom half likes AFL, but the whole country likes cricket. It's I know It seems like a boring sport, but we love it.
Now, is that the BBL that you follow?
No. I don't follow that too much. It was it's the 2020. It's the short version, which takes about 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah, the T20. Yeah. So with the former agency I worked with, we partner with the BBL, the WBBL, AFL, some of the rugby teams over there. So that's why I asked. But all right. So before we go on, I know we don't talk rugby ever. So let's get this rugby in here for a little bit. Because first off, if you haven't watched rugby, you think football's brutal? Watch rugby. It is way more brutal. Like, these guys are maniacs.
I don't know, man. I respectfully disagree, because here's the thing. You're always hitting around the middle of your body, right? Whereas you'll never see a rugby player just put his helmet down and or put his head down, I should say, and just run like a freight train. So I think that the helmets give this false sense of protection here. So I don't know. It's a little bit tamer, I think.
Okay. One of the discussions I saw about trying to lower concussions was get rid of the face mask, and you're going to see people lead with their face and their head way less. So that's an interesting point. So,
yeah. All right. So who's your rugby team then?
The Brisbane Broncos.
Nice. Great name.
Yeah.
Great.
I know. Actually, I think we stole a bunch from the NFL. There's Cowboys, Broncos. There's a bunch of them in there, like 5 or 6 of them.
What's the most Australian team nickname down there? Like, are they the Kangaroos? There better be a team name called the Kangaroos.
The Rabbitohs.
What is that?
That's the South Sydney Rabbit. Pretty much just rabbit. Anything in Australia, we just add an O to it. Dave-O, Steve-O, anything like that. So they call them the Rabbitohs. It's actually owned by Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe owns the team. Yeah. So that's probably the most Aussie name, I think.
Join us for next week's show when we do team previews on the South Sydney Rabbitohs and the Brisbane Broncos. Please join us for next week's show.
Be a very quick podcast.
Yes,
very. This is the longest we've kept Josh quiet since I've ever been.
I know crap about rugby, man.
Josh, I don't either. It's just all I know. Fun fact for those who've never watched rugby: you cannot do a forward pass. Everything has to be backwards. So it's a fun fact about rugby. It's really confusing when you watch it because you're yelling at them to just toss it forward. No, you can't do that.
So leading into NFL, that's actually, a lot of people don't know, that's how American football came about. Because it was a revolt against I guess the way they're done things. So they just went, all right, we're going to pass forwards. So there's 5 tackles in rugby. They went, no, we're going to make it 4. So that's why there's 4 downs and they pass forward. So anyway,
very cool.
So it does have something to do with it, sort of.
Look at this.
Yeah.
You're everyone listening, you're learning. You're welcome. You expected to come here and listen to 4 Dumbos talk some fantasy football. Instead, you have 4 enlightened individuals talking rugby. But now we're going to move into our team preview, starting with the Bills. Then we move on to the Patriots and the Saints. A little bit of the coverage of kind of the stuff that's been going on before we get to the Redskins, which we'll wrap up with. But the Eagles brought back Jason Peters. We'll get Josh's thoughts on that in 1 second. Kelvin Harmon, second-year wide receiver for the Redskins, just tore his ACL during training camp. So he's now out for the season. And, of course, the Washington Redskins are now retiring their old nickname of the Redskins, potentially switching it to God knows what. I really don't know. I mean, there's been a bunch of rumors and people have thrown out names on Twitter and Facebook.
Well, from what I understand, they haven't announced the name yet because there's so much tied up in like trademark battles and stuff. I guess somebody out in California went through and like registered trademarks for a whole bunch of like different potential names.
I saw that.
Dude,
5-head. That's a
brilliant
5-head play. You know how much money Dan Snyder has?
Right?
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, why did we... Quick ways to make money. Why didn't we do that?
Reminds me of that episode of The League when Taco buys the web domain for DallasCowboys.com and then they all get invited out to Cowboys training camp. Brilliant. I love it.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. So I guess before we dive in here, because this is a hot button topic, not going to cover any of, the meaning of Redskins and all this stuff. But if you had to pick a name, the Washington, what would they be, Josh? What would you like to see the Redskins change their name to?
I've seen the Warriors thrown about, which from what I understand, Snyder has had that trademarked for quite some time. So I think that will probably end up being the favorite. I kind of like Red Tails. It's named after a group of African-American fighter pilots. And I think that, moving from, a racial slur to something that, kind of promotes social justice, I think would be a very great PR move, let alone, shining some light on American history. Because again, they are the team in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. So
definitely.
It is pretty crazy. It's 2020 and it's taken this long to change that name, to be honest.
So Dave, I mean, what would you like to see him switch it to?
I mean, I hate to just agree again, but I think the Warriors is a pretty good one. It's nice, it's clean, I don't know. I don't think you need to go too far off the beaten track, but But really, there's no wrong answer as long as it's not Redskins. I think it'll be fine.
Awesome, Ryan. Any thoughts?
The one that made the most sense to me, and I love Red Tails, fully on the side of history there, but I liked when someone brought up Pigskins because A, it's a football, and B, their fans are the Hogs. So, I mean, I kind of like that. So that was the one that I've been on the side of. If it's Red Tails, I'm definitely cool with that. Warriors is what it is, but...
What if we just cut it off at Pigs? Can we just call them the Washington Pigs?
I'm fine with that, too.
Fantastic. I'm going to go with the alliteration of the Washington Wallabies. Why not? Kick it... What's a wallaby, Dave?
It's just a small kangaroo, just a baby kangaroo.
Love it. Fantastic.
That's all it is.
Rocco's Modern Life.
Yeah.
Yes!
The kangaroo.
Sorry, that's before Joe's time. He's not going to get that.
Random Australian fact, the kangaroo has the smallest brain-to-body ratio of any animal in the world. They are dumb as nails. So, anyway.
Interesting. All right. Well, moving from dumb as nails to the Buffalo Bills, which seems like an appropriate transition. We'll start off here. Again, if you're new to the show, upside, downside, trust fall, rookies, Josh and Ryan give each of those for them, and then we cover one specific player we want to spotlight. I'll give you my sleeper and my individual defensive player as well. So starting with the upside, Josh, you have Dawson Knox, the tight end. Ryan, you have John Brown. Downside, Josh, you have Stephon Diggs. Ryan, you have Devin Singletary. Trust fall, you both have Josh Allen. Rookie to watch, you both have Zach Moss. My sleeper, I have John Brown. Big fan of Brown. Still think he's wildly underrated right now. I think a lot of the attention is going to go to Stephon Diggs, and that's going to leave John Brown fairly open, which I'm looking forward to. And then at linebacker for IDP, I have Tremaine Edmonds. Really, really young, great middle linebacker. I think he's only going to improve every single year that he's been in the league. So let's start here. Our big name we want to talk about is Devin Singletary. And Ryan, I'll let you lead off with it since it's your downside. Why are you not a fan of Devin Singletary this year?
Honestly, and this is something that's been the talk of Twitter and just the talk of fantasy football, is Josh Allen limits the ceiling of Buffalo running backs. When I was doing my research, Buffalo running backs, I think, have scored 9 total rushing touchdowns in the last 2 years. You already have Zach Moss, who's expected to fill the Frank Gore role. You have Josh Allen, who is going to either throw the ball or hurt him inside of the 5 and 10 yard line. It's basically, the best way to put it is he's going to have to do most of his work in between the 20s and break off long touchdowns. And I just don't know if that's going to be enough to match his RB2 draft status.
That's easy. Go ahead, Dave.
I have to agree with you here. Here's the thing. I mean, I want to pull one out for Devin Singletary here because he, it's kind of like, if anyone watched Titanic, I don't know if you guys are old enough or not, but, Jack finally thinks he's got a winning ticket. He goes on the Titanic. He survives, all to find out Rose won't let him on the freaking door, right? That is Devin Singletary, all right? He finally gets a chance. The end of season run was amazing for him, only to find out Zach Moss is coming in, who is going to be the passing down back. But, here's the thing as well, right? A lot of people don't know about Zach Moss. They're talking about his pass-catching ability. In Utah State, he rushed 235 times for 1,410 yards. Guys, that's 6 yards a carry. I understand college is very different to the NFL, but they didn't bring him in just to be a pass-catching back. And, let's talk about the goal line back, which is Josh Allen, who in the last 2 years has the same rushing touchdowns as Saquon Barkley, 17 rushing touchdowns. I mean, 510 yards he got last year on 109 attempts. I'm just not willing to pay the third-round price for Devin Singletary when you don't even know what his role is going to be.
That's fair. I want to add in that Zach Moss played in the Pac-12, so let's not go crazy.
That's very true.
It is the Pac-12. They always never actually. What's trivia question? What's the last Pac-12 team to make the college football playoff? Is it Oregon?
Washington.
I say
Washington when they played Bama.
Yeah,
I believe that is terribly gross. But no, I guess on the side of Singletary, let me see where he's going right now, because I think that really plays into I don't have him personally on my radar.
I have him as RB31 in my.
I say last I saw he was RB23. I just don't remember the round.
See, that's too high. I mean, I get the, anytime you bring in a running back, especially with draft capital that Zach Moss has, the 3rd round pick, that's instantly going to raise some red flags. People are going to be like, well, the team doesn't trust him. I mean, I don't think it's that they don't trust him. I just think that this is what teams are doing now. They're going to these running back by committee looks. And, Sean McDermott, their GM, I believe it's Brandon Beane, both of them come from the Carolina Panthers. And if you remember, they ran a tandem backfield in Carolina for a long time with D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart. And this is what I find very interesting are the parallels between the Williams and Stewart backfields and now the Singletary and Moss backfield. Williams and Stewart, for the first 2 years that they were together, they were top 5 and top 10, respectively, in broken tackles, forced missed tackles. You look at Devin Singletary, his last year in college at Florida Atlantic, he was second to David Montgomery in the NCAA in broken tackles. Last year, Zach Moss was second in the NCAA in forced missed tackles. This is what these guys do. They grind, they break tackles, and they get those extra yards. With Devin Singletary, what you're banking on is the efficiency because he's not scoring touchdowns. I believe he only had 5 all of last year, and I think 2 were rushing, or 3 were rushing, one or the other. And Zach Moss has the ability inside the numbers to get those short, goal line touches, so to speak. Josh Allen had, I believe, 4 touchdowns last year inside the 5. Half of them were, 4 of them were at or the first or second yard line, and half of them, 2 of them came on 4th down. So to me, he's not like the go-to goal line back. It was just Frank Gore couldn't get it done. So now you bring in someone like Zach Moss who can get it done. I'm not saying that Josh Allen's rushing touchdowns are going to diminish, but what I do know is that Devin Singletary is not going to be that guy. So unless he is getting additional receptions to go on with the 160 to 200 carries that we expect him to get, it's just not going to happen. Buffalo running backs last year had 80 targets, and Josh Allen had the lowest percentage of checkdowns last year among quarterbacks. So that tells me that he's not really looking to target running backs. Zach Moss has a proclivity to be a receiving back. Singletary, we saw, can do it, but I don't know that that's going to be the option, especially when you go out and you bring in someone like Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, Josh and I were actually having this discussion on Twitter, and I could see that I was losing, so I had to change the narrative a little bit. But inside the 5, I found this actually interesting. Allen had 5 rushes and 8 passes. He scored 9 times on those. Like, I think his ability to run opens things up for the wide receivers as well and the tight ends, to where I just think Josh Allen inside the 5-yard line is such a threat. I mean, he's been compared to Cam Newton for such a long period of his time, and I think that's a great comparison. His accuracy is just disgusting. I was trying to find something good to say about his accuracy. Literally every metric, there's no adjusted metric where he did not finish last out of every starter in the NFL. So
there was a video. You know how those rookies go to like those Panini rookie card shoots?
Yes.
At the start of the season, and the quarterbacks were just trying to hit a tire, throw a football through a tire, the classic like backyard game. And I believe it was whoever came, it was Darnold, Baker, and a couple other quarterbacks. They were there trying to toss it through. And, Darnold and Baker, they were hitting the tire or were close to getting it. Allen's first throw, didn't even hit the thing the tire was being held on. I was like,
it reminds me
how was he a first round pick?
It reminds me of Major League, where the guy cuts the head off of the practice batter. Josh Allen killed somebody with the first throw.
I mean,
that's the thing. Allen is fun to watch, though, and because of that rushing upside, you want him in fantasy. I still maintain the narrative that he's not a great pro quarterback. I would say he's average at best. But again, we're not talking real life. We're talking fantasy, and this is a guy that you want because of what he offers from a rushing perspective.
Yeah.
Where are you guys picking up Allen? I mean, obviously, Mahomes and Jackson are the top 2 quarterbacks, right? Where do you guys have him ranked in, and where would you ideally like to pick him up in fantasy drafts?
In my projections, he statted out as QB7. David and I have done a ton of mocks together. I'm QB very late guy. If one of the top guys falls to like the 5th or 6th round, I'll grab them at that point because it's just getting ridiculous. His ADP is QB7. He stats out as my QB7. He's going in about the 6th round, and I just don't take quarterbacks that early. So I'm probably not going to see much Josh Allen, but if he falls to the 8th, 9th, 10th round, I'd consider grabbing him at that point just because of his rushing upside.
Yeah, I have him as my QB9 just from projections, so I'm kind of in that same vein. I mean, I was talking up Allen last year as well before, everybody was kind of jumping on the bandwagon. One of our writers, Chris Molina, he kind of was, turning me on to Josh Allen, and I was like, you know what? For a late round dart throw, I get it. The consistency wasn't always great, and again, that boils down to a lot of the accuracy, and he's one of the top deep passers. Like his game is, I'm chucking it. That's where I'm going. Now, granted, the accuracy still isn't great, but when you're throwing that many deep passes, you have a higher chance at bigger plays, which obviously boost up your ability to gain chunk yards and additional touchdowns.
Yeah, we touched on him as the sleeper. John Brown was 8th in the NFL in air yards last year, and I don't think Diggs is going to change that. He's going to take some targets away, but last year I called John Brown and Josh Allen Mahomes, Tyreek Hill light. You have one of the strongest arms with one of the fastest wide receivers. Even the loss of targets going against CB2s now, I think John Brown is going to just do fantastic. Even with the loss of targets, I don't know that his numbers are going to drop much.
Yeah, and Stephon Diggs is a great deep threat too. So, I mean, we talked about this going into last year with the Bills. Like, they brought in talent that fits with what Josh Allen does best. You're doing the exact same thing this offseason with, bringing in Zach Moss to kind of fill that Frank Gore role and be more effective at it, mind you. And then Stephon Diggs, whose ability not only as a route runner, who, if you look at Matt Harmon's reception perception, John Brown was a great route runner as well. Diggs has that same quality, can also get down the field. So now you've got Diggs opposite John Brown. You've got Cole Beasley in the slot, who's always had really good hands and a high catch percentage. And that helps when you have a very inaccurate quarterback. This offense is set to really succeed. So I'm interested to see how it continues to grow and if Josh Allen can maybe take that next step, even at the very least, get into the low 60% completion area.
And as you said, I mean, sorry, I was just going to say John Brown. I mean, this guy's a stud. You're picking him up late. And what I love about him, you raise a great point, Ryan, is that he's probably going to be going up against the second best cornerback on the team. Whereas last year, he was the number one. Now, Smokey Brown has some wheels, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's that caliber of a player like Stephon Diggs is, where he can really draw double coverage. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do as far as, matching up one-on-one against the second best cornerback. I think those numbers are only going to go up, to be honest. Last year was, 1,060 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's not bad at all. Especially you're picking them up probably in the 8th or 9th round, maybe.
Oh, you could probably get them later than that, honestly. I mean, this is a run-first offense. They're not going to be throwing the ball a ton. So it's very hard to support even one wide receiver a la Diggs, let alone 2.
John Brown's currently going as wide receiver 47, which is the last pick in the 9th round.
Okay.
So he's going, that's his overall. If you look at his overall, he's going in the same round as guys like a Julian Edelman, Will Fuller, a few picks before Marvin Jones, Christian Kirk. So, I mean,
I would definitely rather have Jones or Kirk over John Brown personally.
No, sure, definitely. But at that point, like, Brown's technically, like, he's wide receiver 47 right now, whereas like Christian Kirk is wide receiver 37.
I will say this though, I don't think John Brown represents upside the way that guys like Kirk in a high passing offense.
Oh, definitely.
Jones high passing offense. Even Edelman as the presumed number 1, which, I mean, I'm down on Edelman, but still, there's still upside there. I can recognize that. And even Will Fuller, like, we've seen how good Fuller can be when he plays and when he's healthy. It's always just been a matter of health for him. And without DeAndre Hopkins, there's room for a true number 1. Can it be Fuller? Will it be Cooks? So I think I would probably take all those guys even before John Brown, just because of the amount of upside they represent.
Yeah, I know we're not talking about the Cardinals, but the number, if you look at targets per game, Larry Fitzgerald was the number 2 wide receiver there with 110 targets. I don't know that the number, I'm not in on Kirk or this passing offense. Fitzgerald had 4 touchdowns last year. Kirk only had 3 in 13 games. I don't know that there's going to be a ton of volume for the wide receiver too. I would happily take John Brown over Christian Kirk.
They ran by far the most 4 wide receiver sets. When you're running 4 wide receivers, you're throwing the football.
Oh, I agree, but
I think that just
maybe not to the wide receiver too. Yeah.
Well, it's either you're throwing the football, or your tight ends suck. So
yeah, and they don't utilize the tight end position.
Not even a little bit. Yep.
Yeah. So there's your reason on the Cardinals there. But no, I think this offense, if Josh Allen, I think where John Brown will end on this. I think where John Brown's sort of position is going to lie this year is less in the deep game. It'll still be there, but I think Diggs takes more of that deep ball role, whereas John Brown, he's very clean on out routes, fades, stop routes, and slants. He's very clean on those routes. So if Josh Allen can figure out how to throw a slant pattern, John Brown has the speed to outrun, I would say, 90% of the DBs in the NFL right now. They're going to be covering him. He is deceptively quick. He doesn't look it, but he's deceptively quick out of his cut. And then once he catches the ball, he takes off. So If John Brown can do that, I think there's a very good chance that they can succeed. And now, team of the hour, the New England Patriots. The dynasty is not, I really can't even say with confidence that the dynasty is not over because I really don't know. But
yeah, we don't know what Cam Newton's going to show up.
We don't even know if Cam Newton's going to even be on the team by then. Who knows? Upside, Josh and Ryan, you both have N'Keal Harry. I'm not a hater, and I will tell you why. All right, I will tell you why once we start talking about Newton. I'll reverse the roles, Josh, and you can be the host on this team. Downside, Josh, you have Edelman. Ryan, you have Sony Michel. Thank God. Trust fall. Josh and Ryan, you both have James White. Rookie to watch, you each have 2 different tight ends. Josh going with Dalton Keene out of Virginia Tech. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
And Devin Asai from somewhere.
UCLA.
Thank you. Great. Sleeper, Damian Harris. This is solely based off of my hate for Sony Michel and my thought process that Rex Burkhead will play 4 games this season because of injuries. And James White, they don't hand the ball to James White. It's that simple. And then IDP, I have Josh Uche out of Michigan. He was their first real pick in the draft because I don't really count a D2 safety as their first overall pick in the draft. Although, God, he'll be a Hall of Famer in 10 years, knowing Belichick. But Belichick has had a success drafting linebackers in the second round, in the third round. He has had little to zero success as of late drafting safety. So I love the Josh Uche pick. I don't know if he's going to be used more in a pass rushing role or more of in a Kyle Van Noy type role.
Well, if you look at his college production, it's pass rushing.
And that's what I assume it's going to be. So if you're in a league where it's either deeper or you're very sack dependent, I think Josh Uche is a good dynasty pick because I don't know if he plays too much this season just because
he's a rookie.
He's a rookie. There is a good amount of talent on that defense, but a lot of it normally lies in the secondary where a lot of their linebackers and edge guys have either departed or there's just ample opportunity. So he may see the field this year because Winovich, if you remember last year, saw a decent amount of time, mostly on pass rushing downs, but Uche could see more time this year. But a great dynasty pick there. And one guy that wasn't mentioned in any of this because, well, he was signed way after Josh and Ryan did their upside downside picks for these guys. Cam Newton. So I guess I'll start here because I'm the Patriots fan.
Just so you know, Joe, I'm actually a Patriots fan.
I was going to say, David's a huge Pats
fan. I'm a massive Patriots fan. And look, it is tough being a Patriots fan. And I'll tell you why, all right?
Oh, yeah. When you stop with that crap. Yeah, hey, tough being a Patriots fan, my ass.
It is,
Josh,
right?
let the man speak.
It is. Look, when you're winning, people do nothing but call you cheaters and rag on you. And then when you're losing, people love laughing at you. So this is never a great time to be a Patriots fan, all right? We're hurting inside, and the quarterback that left us.
For you.
Thank you.
I want you to imagine.
No sarcasm, right?
I want you to imagine we're the Dallas Cowboys, except we win. That's the difference. Like Patriots fans are like Cowboys fans, except we win. That's essentially, we don't reminisce about the 90s because the 90s were a dark time. We reminisce about stuff that happened, 2 years ago. So no, I guess starting with the Cam Newton thing.
Joe, you're just too young to remember when the Patriots didn't do crap.
Yep.
That's 100%. I was born in 98. We've won 6 Super Bowls in my lifetime. Tom Brady has been the quarterback ever since I knew the word football. So yeah, go me. Just kind of got lucky with Boston sports. But Cam Newton, I mean, look, he has to follow up Tom Brady. So, and I've said it on the show before that I lost all respect for Cam Newton as a player when he didn't die for the football in the Super Bowl. Lost all respect for that guy. I think he's great off the field. You cannot deny anything he does in the community for the area of Charlotte and the entire North Carolina, that area. He has done so much for them. Great with kids, all that stuff. His personality can be a bit abrasive and a bit strange at times. We've seen him at the podium be a little crazy. And I've heard people say that, how is Bill going to handle the personality of Cam Newton? To that I say, he handled Chad Ochocinco and Randy Moss. He's fine, okay? I'll put Randy Moss's ego and Chad Ochocinco's ego above Cam Newton's any day of the week. It's not even close. So Newton, this is a complete, like, Newton's not coming off a good year in signing with the Patriots to play under Bill Belichick. He has not been good for about 3 or 4 seasons. Like, he really hasn't
not
been.
True. 2018, he was pretty good.
68% completion percentage.
Okay, a completion percentage is bullshit. I refuse to do anything with that stat. Drew Brees completed 75% of his passes. You want to know why? Because Alvin Kamara stood 2 feet next to him. Completion percentage is the worst statistic today in football. The worst statistic.
3,400 yards, 28 total touchdowns.
He didn't throw over 4,000 yards. How does team
He's
do?
only done that once in his career.
Listen, guys.
Because of how much he contributes as a rusher. Like,
okay, all right, fine. Cam Newton was good 2 years ago. He's not coming off a good year. He's not coming off a good year.
He was hurt.
That's my point.
He was hurt. Yeah, exactly. He only played 2 games.
That's my point. He's not coming off a good year.
I'm pumped about Cam, and here's why, right? So, yes, he's been playing hurt, but he's had a year and some change to get over it, right? And you talk about his rushing ability. Guys, he had over 4,800 yards in his career. That's more than Melvin Gordon, Devonta Freeman, Carlos Hyde, and excluding last year, he averages roughly 600 yards rushing per year. I still think we're going to get a lot of that rushing Cam, all right? It's going to be it's going to be a Josh Allen-esque. I mean, you guys mentioned it before about Josh Allen. I can see Cam being that guy, Plus, he's got N'Keal Harry. Bill Belichick, isn't silly. It's the first wide receiver he's picked in the first round in a long, long time, all right? So N'Keal Harry has upside, which I know we'll talk about. Julian Edelman is still who he is, right? So he's got pass catches. Yes, they do need a tight end, but it's still Cam Newton, And the one thing I do want to touch on, right, is people, the Sony Michel, James White debate, and Ryan, this is where you and I are going to have a McGregor versus Khabib rematch, all right? Because we have very opposite views about this, all right? So I want to point out some stats. In 2015, when he had this MVP performance, right, Jonathan Stewart rushed 242 times for nearly 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns, right? That is 7th most in the league. Now, the one other point I want to point out is his pass catching. He only had 16 receptions for, 99 yards and 1 touchdown, right? The other 2 running backs accounted for 25 rushes, 45 rushes, which was Fozzie Whitaker and Cameron Artis-Payne, and they only caught 17 catches between them, right? So he does not like checking the ball down. This is where I think it hurts James White and helps Sony Michel. I don't think Cam is going to give those little dump-off passes, like Brady did. I think it's either going to be rushing, Cam's going to rush it, or throw. So it's going to be Sony, Cam rushing it, or he's going to throw the ball.
So
sorry, that was my little rant. But
so I'm gonna ruin your take. I'm sorry. I know we're Patriots fans. I'm gonna ruin your take. Jonathan Stewart's not a pass catcher. Fozzie Whitaker's not a pass catcher. Cameron Artis-Payne is not a pass catcher. Christian McCaffrey in 2 seasons with Cam Newton had 187 receptions. 187 receptions. Now McCaffrey is 1,000 times better running back than James White. But James White's hands could definitely compete with McCaffrey. His route running is crisp, and he's a one-cut style back. McCaffrey, again, way better. But James White is going to play that McCaffrey to Cam Newton, to where James White's, the moment they sign Cam Newton, James White goes from a flex spot to going back to an RB1 from 2 years ago. Like, that's his potential, is like now top 5 at this point, because in PPR leagues, he's going to have so much opportunity to catch the football. I know Newton comes in and he's brand new. He doesn't have any prior relationships like Brady did, where Brady was like, okay, I'm only throwing to Edelman and White because they're the only ones that could catch the football. I know Newton's been working with Harry and he's been working with a bunch of different guys. And I'm a huge N'Keal Harry fan, but James White benefits from this so much. And Sony Michel, listen, the one thing I have against Sony Michel is if he ran the football on that 2-yard pitch that James White scored in the Super Bowl, Sony Michel would have lost 5 yards because he wouldn't have fell forward. James White falls forward. Sony Michel gets blown over by a small gust of wind, like by a 3-year-old. Like if a 3-year-old blows in his distance, he just falls over. Like he isn't a running back. Sony Michel isn't a running back. He's a sorry excuse for a Georgia running back. Because if you look at Georgia's recent history, and even their old history with Herschel Walker, they produce running. Listen, Sony Michel had 2 chances from the goal line, from the 1 yard line, to fall forward in the AFC division game last year. He lost 2 yards on both of those plays. When they put in Rex Burkhead on second down, Burkhead gained those yards back to get them on the 1. And what they do? They put Michel back in, and he fell. Sony Michel is terrible. He is an awful running back. I have no worries about him whatsoever. Don't draft him, please. I'm looking right into the camera. Do not draft Sony Michel. He's terrible at football. He won't play by week 8. Damian Harris will take over for him.
The only thing I want to throw
I've opened up Pandora's box.
Yeah. The only thing I want to throw
inner rage of Joe.
Yeah.
This usually happens at least once a show. Like you just happen to get it because now the Patriots are on. So
well, hold on. It's always Sony Michel, Jared Goff, Blake Bortles somehow. I don't know how Blake Bortles comes into the equation anymore. He's like
backed up Goff.
Yeah, he backed up Goff. Those are and Ryan Tannehill. The Titans are next week, right?
Yes.
Everyone come back next week.
2 weeks.
All right, everyone come back in 2 weeks. Actually, we'll come back next week too. We still want you here. Come back in 2 weeks. You hear a nice long rant about Tannehill. But no, Dave, this happens once, maybe twice a show. For those that are, consistent listeners, one, we appreciate all of you, but two, they hear me rant at least once or twice a show. It's when
I get several texts every once in a while. They're like, dude, Joe's rants are classic.
Yeah, it's a staple.
I want to throw in some quick things on James White, though. I feel like this offense is this offense, and they're going to throw in rushing plays. When I went back and looked at the games with Jacoby Brissett from 2016, Brissett was able to rush about 5 times per game, so I feel like that's a safe projection for Cam. Since 2015, James White has been targeted 430 times. That's the most of any NFL running back and second on the team only to Julian Edelman. He's going to get his targets regardless of who the QB is. Cam is a smart guy. White is clearly smart. White is clearly the second best slot wide receiver on this team. And I think you're going to see him on the field more just because he's a better overall back. Like we brought up, he's a better overall back than Sony. You didn't need to have the best overall back when you had Tom Brady back there. I think you might see more playing time with White in Cam's because with the scrambles, White is a guy who's going to be able to innovate with him and move with him.
I think too, you're going to see a lot more shotgun than under center, which puts James White on the field more. White normally doesn't line up as the single back in a formation because when he's back there, he's not running the football. That's when you normally see a Rex Burkhead to kind of give that versatility. Or if Sony Michel's back there, it's a run. If White's back there, 90% of the time it's going to be a pass. If Rex Burkhead's back there, that gives you the versatility. Yeah. So I think Burkhead sees more playing time if he could stay healthy over Michel in that instance. But I think they run a lot more shotgun. I love that you brought up the Brissett thing because when Brissett played, he didn't know. I mean, he was a rookie. He didn't really know the offense. They knew that Brissett could run. Obviously, Cam Newton is a much better runner than Jacoby Brissett is fast, bigger, all these different things. And I think you will see a little more of that Jacoby Brissett offense sprinkled into what Josh McDaniels is going to call.
I love that you guys are going through and referencing like the MVP season. Cam has not been that player. Like,
thank you.
At all since then.
Thank you.
The 3 years since, and I'm excluding last year because he's injured, like the 3 years since, so much of Cam's game relies on his rushing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Over the last 3 years, and again, we're talking 2016 to 2018, he has had 2 of his lowest rushing attempts per season. 2, because he can't handle the wear and tear anymore. He went from averaging almost 11 touchdowns rushing per season over the first 5 years of his career to 5 over the last 3 years. He's not getting it done as a runner. Yes, I understand. He missed all of last year. Sure, maybe he's healthy, whatever. He's had 2 shoulder surgeries. He can't throw the deep ball anymore. And we talked about that with Tom Brady last year. And the deep ball has always been what sets up the underneath passing game for the Patriots and Josh McDaniels. If he can't throw the deep ball, and he doesn't really have a speedster on this team to be able to do that, and for someone that's as big as N'Keal Harry, he struggles in contested catch situations. So this is going to be a very interesting setup. And I don't know if it's a fully, trying to fit a square peg into a round hole kind of thing, but you're not going to see the same rushing ability from Cam Newton with the Patriots because he's just not there anymore at all.
Agreed.
Do you guys think Jared Stidham starts over him? I personally don't. I think it's Cam. I think it's got to be Cam day one.
There have been rumors today, on the day of this recording, that Brian Hoyer has looked like the best quarterback so far on this roster.
Well, he knows the system better than anybody.
Listen. I'm not advocating for Brian Hoyer to start, all right? There is 2 playoff quarterbacks on this New England Patriots team. Don't you forget about it. Cam Newton and Brian Hoyer, a playoff starter. We don't reference the 5 interceptions he threw in that game against the Chiefs. He's just a playoff starter. But I think what you see is Cam play and start week 1. Here's the 2 scenarios that the Patriots have. They're either 8-8, because I can't fathom a team that Bill Belichick coaches that wins less than 8 games. I just can't bring myself to say Bill Belichick.
So you don't remember the Cleveland Browns days, huh?
Yeah, well, no, exactly. Bill's more evolved now. He has a little more under his belt since then. But I mean, listen, Josh, are you going to sit here and tell me you can honestly sit here and say Bill Belichick's a below 500 coach? Like that,
I think if Cam, no, I'm not. No, of course not. Bill Belichick's not an under 500 coach, but if Cam Newton isn't healthy, which has been the speculation as to why it's been so long for him to sign with a team, if he is not fully healthy and he struggles, I don't think that defense is enough to carry them the way, because again, you're dealing with a second-year guy in Jarrett Stidham. Not only a second year, the guy was a 4th-round pick. That's where backup quarterbacks are selected. That's just the reality of the situation. Yes, there are quarterbacks that come in from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th, 7th rounds that end up being starters and being productive. Obviously, we've seen it with Tom Brady. Russell Wilson was a 3rd-round pick, so on and so forth. There are always exceptions to the rule. But the majority of starting quarterbacks, they come from the 1st round. It's just the reality of the situation. Yeah. So if you're going to tell me that Jarrett Stidham is going to come in if Cam isn't healthy and can't move this offense and lead this team to 10-plus wins the way that Matt Castle did, I'm just not seeing it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because you guys are forgetting.
These are inferior weapons. They are.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning, when he left the Colts and, after neck surgery, went to the Broncos, people were having the same conversation. Adrian Peterson, after he tore his ACL, same conversation. Those 2 guys put up career-high numbers the year following, right? I mean, maybe it was Peyton was 1 year after that. It was 2014. He had his 5,000-yard, 50-touchdown season. I mean, the guy absolutely went bonkers. Brand new system. And we're talking about Belichick. We're talking about Josh McDaniels. That is a huge upgrade from Ron Vera. Yeah, I just think there's so much potential there. But the one other stat I want to bring up with Cam Newton is, did you guys know he had 7 kids? I only found that out yesterday.
What?
The guy's catching up. Did you watch that? Victor Cruz did an interview with Todd Gurley, Cam Newton, and Odell Beckham. If you get a chance, watch it.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, he talks about how he has 7 kids. I'm like, oh my God, he's secretly catching up with Philip Rivers, and no one's talking about it.
Yep,
that's the most impressive stat for me.
Is it 7 kids with the same woman, or is he pulling in Antonio Cromartie and having like 7 baby mamas?
He didn't mention a significant other, but who knows?
Who knows?
It could be Cromartie. Could be Cromartie. Yeah, but no, I believe in him. I believe in Cam. I think he's gonna. He's got the tools there. He's got the weapons. He's had a year and a half off. I understand, he was injured, but it's the NFL. They got the best of the best doctors, and he's still young. He's still 31, right? That's not old.
He's not old.
Yeah, no. But he's got a lot of wear and tear from all that rushing, and he's not shy about lowering his helmet and taking a hit. Yeah, that's the difference between Cam and someone like Russell Wilson. When Wilson runs, he slides. He doesn't take that same type of.
It's true.
So,
I think another thing to add to that is you talk about Wilson, Lamar Jackson's another great example of 2 guys that run but don't take hits. They're not built to take hits. That's the issue. Is
Russell Wilson, just because you're built to take a hit doesn't mean that you should take a hit.
Josh, I'm not saying
you can still be smart about it.
I'm not saying you should, but a guy like Russell Wilson sitting at 5'11", barely 200 pounds, he's not going to sit there and drop a shoulder against Bobby Wagner in practice. Whereas
Cam Newton, Devin Singletary does. He's only 200 pounds soaking wet.
Devin Singletary's a running back.
Okay, you're still talking about guys with the same type of frame. That's the point that I'm
Devin
getting.
Singletary can squat 500 pounds. Russell Wilson can't. There's a whole.
How do you know? Have you seen video of him not being able to do that?
No, but every small running back can squat a stupid amount of weight. Every small running. Maurice Jones-Drew deadlifted 550.
Yeah.
He was 5'7".
Wow.
Okay? Maurice Jones-Drew would run through a brick wall with no questions asked. Quarterbacks are not built like running backs. They're
correct.
Just not.
That's why they need to be smarter. It doesn't matter how big they are or small they are.
Josh, I am not disagreeing with what you're saying. If you let me freaking finish what I want to say, okay? I'm saying Cam Newton's not all there, okay? And that the other guys are, and they don't have the mentality of Lamar Jackson's a tall and built human being. Lamar Jackson is not dropping a shoulder against Marlon Humphrey in practice. He's not dropping a shoulder against a D tackle. Cam Newton is 6'6", 250. He's built like a fridge. Like the guy could run through anything he wanted to.
I'd love to find a fridge that only weighs 250 pounds.
What was it? Well, hold on. You bring that up. How much did William Perry weigh? Right? Because he was the refrigerator. How much did he weigh? There's no way he weighed as much as a refrigerator.
I don't know. Looking at him, he might.
He might have. Perry was what, 3 feet? He was a big boy. Talk about, he was a big boy. But I think the difference between you guys like Wilson and Jackson and Newton, another thing is, I don't think Newton is as agile just because he's so big. Whereas Jackson could be running 100 miles an hour and stop right there. Just stop, and you'd be blown away that he could do that. Whereas Cam, it's like he's a train. It takes some time for him to slow down and actually make a turn. Whereas Jackson is like a Ferrari where you can just kind of move left and right wherever he wants to. Newton's built so much more differently. And I hope is that, again, I don't know if Rivera was already coaching him and telling him to do this, but whether it be sliding or just stepping out of bounds, because even Newton wouldn't step out of bounds. Yeah. He'd pull a Walter Payton, drop his shoulder, and still try and get a few extra yards.
Yeah, it's almost like he always felt that he had something to prove by running over a linebacker or his corner or whatever.
Exactly.
I know we're getting ready to transition, but Josh, you kind of touched on this, and maybe this is speaking towards Cam. Cam played in 2 full games last year and only rushed the ball 5 times. So maybe he understands, and we're completely overestimating what he might do in rushing and might fall down into the 50s, and it might be a non-issue.
Yeah, I mean, he averages 7.4 rushes per game over his career.
Going down.
That's going way down. That's going absolutely
way down.
That's like 4, maybe 5.
Yeah. I think he saw in 2018 that, and again, 2018 was the year that he had the lowest career rushes. That was the year that he was throwing the ball better, with a higher completion percentage. But, I think he finally realized, hey, I can be a quarterback. But again, the biggest problem, all that wear and tear, 2 shoulder surgeries now, shoulder. And speaking as someone that has shoulder issues, they're not easy to fix at all. And if it's on your throwing shoulder, that's only going to deteriorate as your career goes on, the more you throw the football.
Yeah. So
that being said, Brady's had shoulder issues over the last few years, and people are still ranking him as the QB5 overall. So,
well, all that's done is sap his arm strength.
Tom Brady is going to be 44 playing this season. Tom Brady isn't human, so we have to understand that Tom Brady is still playing football. Tom Brady was drafted in 1999 by the Montreal Expos. That's how long this guy's been in sports.
Wow.
He's unbelievable. And it's a great point to bring up in the whole notion of Tom Brady sucked last year and now he's good this year. Everyone chill. Okay. But no, it's a good point, is that Brady is just, he's another human. He has had, the shoulder issues, and he's had issues everywhere on his body. He's always listed on the injury report. But I'm interested. I think if Newton can at least nail a 20-yard post route to N'Keal Harry and keep that same underneath guru with White and Edelman, I don't know if Cam Newton is a startable quarterback, because I either see the team going 8-8 or 13-3, and there is no in between for me. They either dominate or struggle to win every single game that they play, because their schedule is very hard this season. They don't have a single cupcake on their schedule outside of their division.
Here's an interesting one, and I'm going to pull this up really quick before you jump in. So Brady threw the ball only 13 less than Winston. Thanks for that clock management.
Love that.
Cam Newton, only twice in his career has he thrown more than 500 times. So this is a completely different offense that we're working with when you put Cam Newton in here over, in place of Tom Brady.
Last thing I'll say quickly is, and transitioning into, I guess, the receiving core is, 2015 when Kelvin Benjamin went down, the one good thing that Cam did, albeit it was 5 years ago, he spread the ball. It didn't just go to his ex-receiver. It went from Ted Ginn Jr. to Greg Olsen to, I think, Corey Brown, is that his name, and Kochery, and there was a bunch of guys, and he pretty evenly gave that ball out. So I think it increases Mohamed Sanu's value. Am I going to draft Sanu? Probably not. But I can see that offense, him, spreading the love amongst all the wide receivers, all the tight ends.
Another forgotten receiver that played for the Panthers. Jericho Kochery.
He was with the Jets too for a while.
He was with the Jets. I loved Jericho Kochery. I think he was a fantastic I love Jericho Kochery. Great name drop, Dave. That's amazing. All right. Moving into our last team of the day here, the New Orleans Saints. So, Drew Brees is back. So good news, bad news, however you want to take it. Upside, Josh, you have Jared Cook. Ryan, Latavius Murray. Downside, Josh, you have Emmanuel Sanders. Ryan, you have Jared Cook as your downside. Trust fall, shockingly, everyone agrees on Michael Thomas. Rookie to watch, Adam Troutman. Did they even draft another skill position player outside of Troutman? I don't think
Troutman was the only one. Yeah,
I think
everything else was like defensive
round quarterback.
Oh yes, so beware the 6th-round quarterback. Don't worry, Taysom Hill will beat him out. Him and his incredible quarterback skills. Sleeper. I have Latavius Murray. I think with Murray, the reason Kamara was so good 2 years ago was because he had Mark Ingram. Kamara fell off last year. Now he was hurt a little bit last year, correct? I'm not misremembering that. So that definitely played into it a little bit. But Kamara can't be a 1. He has to be a 1B because he's not a running back. He is a scat back, in my opinion. He's a really damn good scat back, but he's not a pure running back. So if you get a guy like Latavius Murray, who is a pure bruising running back like Mark Ingram was, if Murray gets worked into the offense more in terms of running, Kamara is going to have what he did 2 years ago, and he's still going to be a top 10 running back.
Well, the thing with Kamara has always been touchdown efficiency, and that was just completely off the table last year.
And
look at what happened.
Go ahead, Dave.
Look at what happened with Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman. They were an amazing 1-2 punch, right? Like you said, Ingram, Kamara. The one other team, I know we're not talking about him, that I worry about is Austin Eckler. Now that he's not a 1B to Melvin Gordon's 1A, but that's a conversation for another day. But I think you're right. Unless they make Latavius more of a first, second down back, or at least getting the brute force, trying to get him to the 40-yard line, I don't think Kamara is really capable of handling the carries that Saquon Barkley, that Zeke can do, plus be an efficient pass catcher.
I 100% agree with that, and that's why I think Murray needs to be worked into the offense more, and I think that's what they're going to do, which is why I have him as my sleeper. And then IDP quick, Demario Davis, the linebacker. I don't think he's ever missed a game in his NFL career. I think he's played 5 seasons, and he's never missed a game. You want to talk about a guy who's going to be in your lineup every single week, putting up double-digit points. They may not be like 20, 25-point games, but they're going to be double digits every week. He's all over the place, can do a little bit of everything. Something I want to bring up before we get into Emmanuel Sanders, because I know that's our topic of conversation. Management Clock brought up another great thing. He has Brees as his quarterback 5. Now, I think that's incredibly high and incredibly bold management. Dave, do you do rankings, Dave, before I toss this over to you? I don't know. Just at least your thoughts on Drew Brees.
I do, and I'm actually pretty high. I don't have him 5, but I have him as my QB 10. I think he's going to do great. Actually, it's funny. Ryan and I were on a live draft. We're in a league. What was it? That was about 2-3 months ago, right?
Yeah.
And Clock Management was able to get Drew Brees in the 15th round. That was impressive. But look, you're talking about some pretty decent receivers, an amazing tight end, incredible pass catching back in Kamara. Plus, don't forget, Latavius Murray can still catch the ball, so he does have the weapons there. The offensive line is decent. So, in leagues where it's really more reliant on pass throwing QBs rather than standard where a rushing QB like Josh Allen's more valuable. I think 10th warrants Drew Brees. So he's mid-40s, is similar age to Tom Brady, but he's still throwing the ball. He's gone over 4,000 yards how many years in a row? The guy can absolutely ball.
Well, one thing I want to throw in first and foremost, it was me who got Brees in the 15th round and broke clock management.
Oh, was it you? Oh, sorry.
But to defend the point of having him as QB5, he was the QB4 from weeks 8 through 17 last year. So when he was on the field and healthy, and obviously Michael Thomas played out of his mind last year, but adding Manny Sands, who I know we're going to talk about here in a little bit, I don't see that it's out of the realm of possibility that Brees is that efficient again. I have him. I think he stats out as like my 10. So we kind of talked about that, but having him as 5 is not unheard of and not a bad ranking.
Yeah, I have Brees as my QB 10 as well. Tommy Garrett, our friend from over at Pro Football Network, he's got him at QB 9. That's kind of where I look at him. Like he's not going to throw a ton of attempts. I mean, 2 of the last 3 years, they've been at 536 and 519 attempts as a team. Last year was a bit of a spike at 581. But again, I think a lot of that had to deal with Kamara's injury. So, how many times are they going to throw? Because the last time they topped 600 pass attempts, they were 7-9. They're playing good defense. They're running the football well. They don't need to throw the football a ton. So for Brees, what you're banking on is efficiency. And I don't want to bank on that type of efficiency without rushing upside as my top 5 QB. So that's kind of where I fit him in, is, sort of that low end QB1 range.
Awesome. And as we transition here into Emmanuel Sanders, the new toy essentially here for Drew Brees, and he signed a 2-year deal just like Drew Brees did. And the signing of Emmanuel Sanders essentially said, these next 2 years, we're giving Drew whatever the heck he needs in order to win us one more Super Bowl. They are investing heavily the next 2 seasons to make sure that they at least are put in a position to win the Super Bowl. So Emmanuel Sanders, obviously being one part of that, he will pair opposite Michael Thomas, and he's not a spring chicken anymore. I think he's 33 going into the season. Yep. Thank you, Josh. And we'll start with Josh on this one because we have started with everyone else. Thoughts on E-Man? I know you're not a big fan of buying receivers into their 30s, even in redrafts.
No, definitely, especially ones that are changing teams.
Yes,
because you always see guys that change teams, they just perennially disappoint. Sanders has always been a second option, right? Which, it's worked for him. He had 3 years over 1,000 yards, 4 straight years over 100 targets. His last year with Pittsburgh, first 3 with Denver. But outside of that, that's really what he's been. He's been a very pedestrian wide receiver too. When I look at what the Saints have been on offense with Michael Thomas, now Michael Thomas's first year, he had Brandon Cooks and Willie Snead. All 3 of those guys topped 100 targets. Thomas had a 17.9% target share. The next 3 seasons, 27.8, 28.3, topped with 31.8% of the team's targets from a year ago. Yes, granted, they have not had a wide receiver 2, like a quality one. The best of that bunch was Ted Ginn in 2017, where he had 70 targets, and he was a wide receiver 35 from weeks 1 through 16. Outside of that, all of their production has come from either Alvin Kamara or a tight end. You still have Jared Cook there, who I believe had a career high in yards per reception last year. You still have Kamara, who hasn't had less than 97 targets in any of his 3 seasons. How many targets are there to go around when Drew Brees isn't throwing for 600 targets?
This is exactly why
that's why I'm down on Sanders. Like, it's really not rocket science.
And I think this is why me and you flip-flop, because that's why I'm down on Cook. I think Cook is going to suffer to get Sanders more targets. So I could definitely see every point you're making. It's just we're looking at it from two different sides. Sanders had an 88% true catch rate last year, and with Breeze being one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL, I think that's going to fit very well. Especially they love the short routes. One of the stats that came up when I was researching for this is Breeze threw 34 passes per game last year. On average, only 3 of them were over 20 yards. They love short routes in this offense.
And that's where Michael Thomas eats, though. That's his bread and butter. Look, Sanders is a speed guy. He's going to get down the field.
But here's the thing. You raised a great point, Josh, and it's that, when he transitioned from Pittsburgh to Denver, right? Here's the thing, you said he went over 1,000 yards. He went 1,400 yards, then he went 1,135, 1,032. He was the number 2 to Demaryius Thomas. Now, I know people who may only have gotten into football in the last few years may not realize, but Demaryius Thomas was a stud.
Yeah.
Back in 13, 14, 15, he was an absolute beast that warranted double coverage, right? And now, who is warranting double coverage? The absolute beast, Michael Thomas. So he's going to see, maybe sometimes a safety covering him, Emmanuel Sanders, right? Now, you raise the point about the age. Now, the thing is, he's 33. How old's Julian Edelman? Edelman's what, 33, 34?
Why do you think I'm down on Edelman?
Yeah, he'll be 34.
But here's this, right? Last year, in his 33-year, stint, he had the second most receptions he ever had, most targets, most yards, and most touchdowns in his mid-30s. So the last thing I want to say about Sanders is that when he dropped off, who was his quarterback? It was Trevor Siemian. Yeah. He went from Peyton Manning to Trevor Siemian. He's now going from
yards with
those
Trevor
guys.
Siemian. Just throwing that out there.
He's still, but now he's going to Drew Brees. One of the future Hall of Famer, first ballot, all time, and I can see nothing but upside here. The offensive line is still improved. So, look, I think you're getting him as probably your wide receiver 3, maybe a flex at best. I think he warrants that,
Ooh.
And look, I was just going to say that the last thing, he was at San Francisco last year, right? This is the same team that in the NFC Championship threw the ball, 8 attempts? 6 catches, I think it was. Yeah. He doesn't have Jimmy Garoppolo thrown to him anymore. Drew Brees is there. I'm all excited about it. So I think as your wide receiver 3, that's a decent pick. It's worth the risk.
You want to know what game we're gonna play?
Oh, here we go.
Because we haven't played it yet.
We haven't done it
yet. Dave doesn't know. Dave, it's the favorite game on the show. Now, coin my favorite game. I don't know about these two bozos, but my favorite game. It's the classic child game. Would you rather? Right. So we look at the current ADP of the player in question. So this being Emmanuel Sanders, he's currently wide receiver 42. So if you're drafting him, you're technically getting him looking at rankings as your 5th receiver, which you think is pretty good. Like you don't even have to play him in a lot of leagues. You don't even have to play him. I don't know if I draft him over some of these names though. So he's 42. We're going to go between wide receiver 40 and wide receiver 45. So we'll start here. This is PPR leagues. You're getting this guy as your wide receiver 5. So that's what we're playing as. You're getting him as your wide receiver 5. So he's a guy that you would occasionally switch into your lineup if his matchup is better than your wide receiver 4 or your wide receiver 3. That's the thought process. Keep that in your head. Starting with Emmanuel Sanders at wide receiver 42 or Marvin Jones at wide receiver 40. Josh.
Oh, Marvin Jones. I want that upside in a higher volume passing offense.
Ryan?
Marvin Jones.
Dave?
Manny Sanders, because Marvin Jones is too inconsistent. 1 week he'll get you 150 yards and 3 touchdowns, and the next week he's on vacation in the Bahamas, or pretty much thereabouts. He'll get you 1 catch for 11 yards. I don't like the consistency. He has the upside, and I know that in the last 16 games he has the same number of touchdowns as Kenny Golladay, being 16, I believe, but it's just too inconsistent. Sorry.
I agree on the inconsistency factor. I would still take Marvin Jones. I personally would take Marvin Jones over Sanders, but I completely understand if you want more consistency, I think you'll get that out of Emmanuel Sanders. Okay, wide receiver 41, Mike Williams or Emmanuel Sanders. Josh. That's a
Mike
tough
Williams.
one.
Yeah, I kind of got to think a little bit only because of the quarterback situation, but I think I would still go Mike Williams because the one thing that he does is go deep, and he does it well. So that's I want that.
Ryan.
As we talked about on the Chargers show, I think Tyrod's the quarterback. Give me Manny Sands. I don't trust Mike Williams this year.
Dave.
Guys, we've been waiting for Mike Williams to be relevant since man invented fire, or discovered fire, I should say. So, I don't like Mike Williams. I couldn't confidently put him in my lineup. He's had maybe 4 games in the last 3 years over 100 yards, if that. It's not worth the risk. I'm taking Manny Sanders all day long.
Justin Herbert has the 4th highest power throwing rating in Madden. Give me Mike Williams.
Yes, yeah, baby.
Give me. I'm complete opposite of Ryan. I think Justin Herbert. I think it's the same experiment they did with Baker Mayfield. Tyrod starts for 3 weeks, gets replaced in week 3, and Justin Herbert comes in. I think Herbert comes in, and Mike. You talk about a guy who can sling it. In a guy who's 6'4" and can run as fast as hell down the field and jump and get the football, give me Mike Williams paired with Justin Herbert, please and thank you. All right, Sanders is 42 at 43. Well, I love this one because I love this guy too. Emmanuel Sanders or Darius Slayton of the New York Giants, Josh.
Oh, give me Slayton all day. I think he's going to be the Giants' #1 wide receiver this year.
Ryan.
Yep, just wrote an article about the Giants wide receiver core, compared Slayton to Amari Cooper. Give me Darius Slayton.
Dave.
Man, I'm standing up for Manny Sanders like he's
yes, you are.
getting bullied. Don't pick on my boy. like R. Kelly did. Like R. Kelly did in that interview. But look, there is Evan Ingram is the #1 receiver there, right?
He's never healthy. Come on,
never
man.
healthy.
But if healthy, right? And
healthy.
Let's not talk. Let's not forget about the top 2 running back. Saquon Barkley. They're pretty much the New York Saquon Barkleys, right? So and then you've also got Sterling Shepard. Don't forget about him. I know it's cliche, but there's too many mouths to feed. I'd rather the #2 option with Drew Brees over Daniel Jones throwing to him. Give me Manny Sanders.
Oh, the Daniel Jones disrespect.
I mean, we're not going to sit here and say that we love Daniel Jones, but out of all the skill position players that are relevant on the New York Giants, the only one that can stay healthy is Darius Slayton.
Yep.
So, if you listen to our Giants preview, I am like John Helmkamp is pants off for JT. I'm pants off for Darius Slayton. I think he has 1,200 yards and 9 or 10 touchdowns. He will go off because the New York Giants defense sucks. They're going to have to throw the football. DeAndre Baker couldn't cover a 3-year-old toddler wearing blacked out sunglasses. Like, he can't cover anything.
And he may not be there.
Yeah, right? He may not be there this year.
That's true. But I think Slayton has more catches, more yards, more touchdowns. It's not even close. I'm not worried about the Daniel Jones situation. I'm not a Daniel Jones advocate by any means, but I'm not worried about that. But I understand the caution there. Where are we here? Emmanuel Sanders or Mecole Hardman? Joshua.
This one I would probably go Sanders, but I will say this. Mecole Hardman has such bigger upside.
Yes.
Such bigger upsides. So, kind of going where they're going in drafts, if I already have like 3 or 4 guys and I'm looking there, I would probably go Hardman. But if I needed a flex, I would probably go Sanders.
Yeah, Ryan.
If I'm drafting strictly as my wide receiver 5, I'm going to go Hardman in the upside because if Tyreek Hill gets hurt, Hardman could be so good this year.
It's all him. Yeah. Dave.
And look, in a similar fashion, I believe in the talent of Hardman, but if we're going with consistency, similar to what you were saying, if you need a flex, if you need a wide receiver, if you're in a 4 wide receiver league, I'd rather Sanders. But look, if you're already set up a wide receiver and you're looking for a flyer, someone who you can sit on your bench and has potential wide receiver 1 upside, maybe I might swing to Hardman on that one.
I hate every skill position player on Kansas City, so out of spite, I will take Emmanuel Sanders. I don't like
Sanders,
the Chiefs.
People always ask you, what's the worst trade you've ever done? Mine involved Manuel Sanders. It was 2014 when he had his monster year. He went over 1,400 yards and I think 10 touchdowns, right? I had Manuel Sanders, and Wes Welker was injured, and he was coming back, I want to say, like week 4 or 5. So I thought I was a genius by trading away Manuel Sanders, straight swap for Vernon Davis, who got 245 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Wow.
That was my worst trade, hands down.
That's a tough one.
We've all been there, man.
That was brutal.
And the last one here, and I already know Josh's answer, so I'll just skip over him. Emmanuel Sanders or Deontay Johnson at wide receiver 45.
Yep, you know my answer.
Deontay Johnson, for those that haven't heard or seen Josh's thread on the Steelers. Ryan?
By the way, just put out an article on Deontay Johnson. So head over to clubfantasyffl.com. You can read all about it.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with Josh's upside. First of all, the article was fantastic.
Thank you.
I don't put him nearly as high as you. I would take Deontay Johnson in this situation for the same reason I would take Mecole Hardman.
Dave?
I look at this the same way I do with Hardman, exact same situation. He has potential upside, but I'm not a believer. I think Juju bounces back. I think Juju is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 there. I can't see Johnson, really flourishing. But yeah, a similar situation. If I need a flex, I'll take the consistency. If I'm looking for upside, I'll go Johnson.
Pass. I'll draft a tight end. Like I don't want either of them. I mean, if I could get Johnson as my 6th receiver, maybe. Like I don't have the confidence that Josh has in him. Josh has him as wide receiver 13. I'm not ready. Yeah. My is correct, David.
Give me
I was not aware of this.
Deontay Johnson this year. You want to talk about one of my guys? Deontay Johnson this year. Bring it.
So
I will take
that's a big call.
When you brought up Deontay Johnson being your wide receiver 13, we clipped that. I have found myself watching that clip and my reactions so many times, like the utter shock.
The eyes, like
I literally went, woo! I don't even know where that noise came from. Like it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a.
That's a big call.
Yes.
I'm in. I'm all in. Like all the chips are at the center of the table. And I just got to wait 4 freaking months to pay off. What's up?
Who's 14, 15, 16? I mean, who are you ranking them over?
My rankings.
Are we talking like Odell Beckham, or do you have...
Let's see.
No, you have Beckham in the top 12, right?
I have... So when I readjusted my rankings for the Terry McLaurin, McLaurin bumped way up. So right now I have Thielen at 13, Deontay Johnson at 14, I have Cortland Sutton at 15, Tyler Boyd at 16, Mike Evans at 17, and Devontae Parker at 18.
You would not take Mike Evans over Johnson? That's huge.
No, so here's the thing. Massive. So these are like my rankings based off projections. So would I take Mike Evans before Deontay? Sure, I would, because I know I can get Deontay Johnson later. That's playing the ADP
straight through his projections. So
yeah.
So
that's impressive.
We got a question from Gray Bear on Twitch that I don't want to answer because next week. Listen. Josh,
so rude, Joe.
Finish. Gray Bear, I like you, and I like that you're watching and listening to the show. But next week we actually cover the Minnesota Vikings, and the question is on Justin Jefferson. So that's actually going to be a talking point of next week. So we don't want to spoil anything for next week. So listen, next week we're talking Vikings along with 2 other teams next week. I'm forgetting the teams off the top of my head, but one of them is going to be...
I'll just respond in the comments. How about that, Joe?
Fine, Josh.
Now Gray Bear won't tune in.
Oh, no, he'll still tune in. Don't worry.
Now Gray Bear won't.
It's just going to be on a lot later next week.
That's 10:30.
And before we go, I always like to... Oh, he just followed us on Twitch. We appreciate you, Gray Bear. Look at that. Brand loyal.
All because I answered the question, Joe.
No, all because I left him in suspense. Gray Bear, we love you. We also love everyone else listening and watching. We appreciate everybody. And before we head off, because we live in fantasy land 24/7 on this podcast, because none of it affects our daily lives at all. It's all in fantasy world. Let's go to the video game world for a sec. Madden 21 is released. It's going to be released very soon. They just released the ratings yesterday for the running backs. Now, I don't know if you guys had the chance to see this, but there was some incredible controversy over where Saquon Barkley is rated currently. Yep. So, ratings go as follows. Christian McCaffrey is a 99.
Shocker.
Rightfully so. If you could give him a 100, I would appreciate that. Derrick Henry is a 93. He's the second highest rated running back, which I think is very bold considering he's one-sided. Ezekiel Elliott is a 92, tied with Nick Chubb, who is a 92, who I love that they have that high. Dalvin Cook is a 91. Saquon Barkley is a 91. Aaron Jones made a huge leap. He's a 90. Joe Mixon's 89. Alvin Kamara and Josh Jacobs are an 88. Originally, when the rankings came out, Saquon was an 89 paired with Joe Mixon. There was so much outcry that they actually boosted his rating. But to that, like, I had said, I'm sorry, if you look at last year, Joe Mixon was better when the team actually gave him the football. Like, Joe Mixon is a good running back. And I found this interesting because you said the New York Saquons, essentially, Dave. And I find it because I feel a lot of people don't believe that Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Ezekiel Elliott, or Dalvin Cook should be rated higher than Saquon Barkley. And I think those people need a reality check.
See, I have Zeke and Saquon very similar. If you took them either one at 2, I'm okay with it. But I think you're right. I mean, that's offensive to throw him behind. Look, Nick Chubb's a talent. Don't get me wrong. I'm big on Nick Chubb this year, but to rank him 3 or 4 behind Chubb, that's a little bit offensive.
Chubb's a running back. Saquon's boomer bust.
I don't understand why people are so up in arms about Madden ranking. Like, I get it. It's the huge fandom, but this is the same thing every year. Madden doesn't look at accumulation of career. No, they look at what happened last year. Saquon was okay last year. He wasn't great. He was hurt. That's just the way that it goes.
Well, and on top of it, it's not like they're necessarily saying Chubb's a better running back. It almost, when you look at how Madden does it, I play a ton of Madden. It's just a formula. If you raise his speed by this number, it affects their overall and this, that, and the other. It's just like projections. Josh isn't saying he would take Deontay Johnson as the number 14 wide receiver. He's saying he thinks his stats are going to finish there when it all is how it came out at the end. They're not saying necessarily, like I said, Chubb is a better running back, but Chubb's break tackle might be higher than Saquon's break tackle and truck. So it boosted him up. Like, it's such a ridiculous thing to be mad about.
Joe, you mentioned with Derrick Henry, like, you wouldn't have him that high because he's one-dimensional. Well, in a way, so is Nick Chubb.
Sure.
Very similar. And they're only one point difference. Yes, I think it's criminal that Alvin Kamara is that low.
Kamara is the one that people
Yeah, because of what he brings to the table as a receiver and is still a very good runner. But again, he was hurt last year. That's why he's as low as he is.
That's exactly what I had said when I was talking with people about this, is because they were mad about Kamara more so than Barkley. He was hurt. He didn't have as good a season last year. And the big thing that plays into Madden ratings, if you've ever played with the ratings for whether it's be a player you create or you're adjusting ratings yourself, the biggest rating that plays into it is awareness. That is one of the biggest things that plays into a player's overall in Madden. So the difference in awareness between a guy like Nick Chubb and a guy like Saquon's awareness is an 84. Nick Chubb's is an 89.
That's the whole point, right? There, so.
And you may sit there and say, why doesn't Saquon have like a 95 overall awareness? Because he doesn't. He has
like the worst number of like negative yard rushes in the league. Like
if you were to stat out,
there was a site that actually accumulated that for us to see, because I really want to see it.
Here's the thing: if you were to stat out Barry Sanders in terms of awareness, he wouldn't be like, he'd be probably maybe low 90s, but I'd put him in the high 80s because his awareness wasn't great. He didn't know where the holes were.
I would disagree. He knew where the holes were. They just
weren't there.
Yeah, they just weren't there. That's why.
What I was going to say, when he got into open space, His agility is a 99. His elusiveness is a 99. His open field running is a 99. It's like all that, but Saquon's issue is, let's not sit here and say Saquon has a godlike offensive line. They are absolutely terrible. But when the hole's there, he looks for the big play. Nick Chubb looks for the 3-yard run. I want a guy that looks for the big play. And then breaks the big. Exactly. Chubb takes what's there. Saquon looks to find something that isn't there. And occasionally he'll get it because he's Saquon Barkley and his skill is out of this world. Like, the 91 isn't discounting what Saquon Barkley is with the ball in his hands. It's discounting the fact that he was injured last year. He was at best. He had some good games, but he was at best in terms of consistency. And the guy is boom or bust. He doesn't go for he doesn't take the easy first down play. He wants the home run every single time. He's not going to take the single. Go ahead.
There's one play against the Eagles, I think it was, where I love watching that highlight. He pretty much just runs around the whole defense. He starts on the 40-yard line. That was in 2018, I think it was, his rookie year.
It was his rookie season.
That is one of the most impressive runs you'll ever see. Just talking about, I understand he goes to the big play, but he was so smart just in the way he was juking guys left and right and made a 40, 50-yard run. Which
but 9 times out of 10, that's going to go for -3 yards.
Yeah, and that's the thing is,
and that's the difference.
It looks because if it's the play I'm thinking of, he hurdled like 2 guys, made another guy, he shrugged another guy off with a spin move, and made a few other guys miss downfield. But it's like, if they just tackled like a normal NFL player should be tackling and wrapped up, Saquon goes for 3 yards on that play, and it looks incredible when he does it. Like it's nothing short of magnificent when he does it. But it's just the Madden rating is not going to reflect your out of this world stars in your eyeballs for Saquon Barkley when he has those incredible plays, because those incredible plays don't happen. The consistency that comes from guys like, and I'll even give credit to Derrick Henry, is he just consistently runs you over. That's it. He just runs you over. There's nothing more to Derrick Henry's game than running straight. That's his entire game. And if he had a bad offensive line, he'd still probably gain 5 yards per carry because he's 6'3", 250 pounds or something like that. The guy's an absolute beast. So there's the difference. I still don't think Derrick Henry should be rated that high. I still don't believe that. They have his awareness at a 98, which is the highest amongst any running back currently statted out right now, like higher than Christian McCaffrey, which kind of bugs me a little bit, but it's by 1 point. I don't know. I'm not buying Madden this year. I think I'm just feeding into EA's consistency to put out a mediocre product. So I was really hoping that 2K would come in after this next game and start making the simulated games, but EA signed a contract. Listen, please, if you're watching, you're listening, please don't buy Madden. Okay, you're just feeding into EA's mediocrity. Please don't. Play Madden 20. Continue to play the exact same game modes you've played, because I guarantee you Madden 21 is a roster update that makes Lamar Jackson sit there on the cover. That's all it is.
They publicly announced, I'm a big franchise guy. Me and 2 buddies play online franchise together.
I do.
They publicly announced they made no changes to franchise mode. I'm
Love
like,
it.
What the hell?
Idiots.
Yeah.
Gung Ho Ultimate Team.
Yep.
Ultimate Team. Okay, we're done. Okay. Well, that was fun. That was a good little wrap up. I enjoy our rants at the end. And Dave is currently a black screen, so I don't know if he's still with us. Dave?
Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you. We just can't see you. As long as we can hear you, that's what matters.
Yeah.
But no, Dave, before we go,
cool.
we just want to give you a chance before we wrap up the show. Just so everyone knows, for those who haven't heard, what is fantasygo.com, and what can users and people find when they visit this site?
Well, actually, Ryan is one of our top guys at fantasygo.com. It's a site I created last year. It's kind of a unique technology. If you're in a Yahoo league, actually, you can actually sync up your league with an analyst of your choice. and they can actually, if you want, co-manage the team with you. They can do ad drops, waiver claims, you name it. Or if you just want someone who, a mentor to give you advice, personalized for your team, that's what it is. So it's really, I guess I call it the Airbnb of the fantasy football world, where you can go on, you pick your analyst based on price rating, you know what I mean? And they help you out, win every single week. So it's a week-by-week basis thing. So really you're getting, I guess, an expert for a week to help you cater for your team. Because that's the one thing. I mean, you can listen to as many podcasts as you want, but every league's score setting is different. Your teams are different. Sometimes you might be saying, hey, do I play player A or player B? But you don't realize the best option is on your bench. So, it's really just connecting fantasy experts with people, just helping them win week to week. We do daily fantasy, season long, and we're actually going to be in basketball and baseball this year as well.
Awesome. I love it.
Check
if you
it out.
want...
You can find Ryan. If you go to fantasygo.com and you can search for Ryan, and he can help you win your league or help with your draft.
I love it. Check it out, fantasygo.com, if you want a little more personalized touch on your team, help week to week with your lineup. It definitely helps out. We can help you out as much as we can here on our live streams, answering questions on Sundays before games, but having that personalized touch from one of our guys like Ryan, that's exactly what you're looking for. You can follow Josh at the One Hudsonian. Follow me at Joe_Zolo. You can follow Ryan at the Fantasy 5. And you can follow Club Fantasy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Club Fantasy FFL. The URLs for today's show, clubfantasyffl.com and fantasygo.com. Be sure to check it out. Get your personalized fantasy advice from there. Always remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football. Next week, we have the Minnesota Vikings, Houston Texans, and the Seattle Seahawks with third-time guest on the show. I love to say that. John Helmkamp of the Red Shirts and now Ball Blast podcast as well. The two have merged. Be sure to go check them out. But we'll have John on next week, and it'll be a later stream, I believe, at 10:30 Eastern. Correct, Josh?
Yes.
10:30 Eastern.
John's out west, so it's kind of flipped from Dave. We need to go later for him. So
yes.
Shameless plug. John's actually an analyst on Fantasy Go as well.
Oh,
so
there you go.
There we go. Love it. So check out
John Ryan's going to duke it out next week.
There we go.
Excited to have John on. You can be sure that there will be a Jonathan Taylor talk for at least 5 minutes on next week's show.
No one loves JT. No one loves JT more than that guy. I'm pretty sure he's got a poster of him on his roof for sure.
So be sure to join us next week for the Vikings, Seahawks, and Texans previews next week. We will see you then. Thank you, everybody.